Don't you hate when you discover a new food or a new restaurant and it tastes so delicious that it forces you to go back there a second time to see if you can recreate the same experience, to see if you can recreate the same magic, the same tastiness, and to see if it can still be as delicious as the first time you tasted this great food that you just discovered. But come to find out, the second time you sink your teeth into this food, it's not as good as the first time. It's not as rewarding. It's not as fulfilling. It does not taste as good, and it does not fill you up after you eat that meal. Well, I don't like that, and I do not like when that happens when I try out a new restaurant or a new food that is just not as good as the first time. So you would think with this analogy that this would also tie into watching movies and watching TV shows, because yes, this actually does tie into that. And by me saying that, because there are some movies that the first movie is so great, it's so critically acclaimed, it's so universally loved, that when a sequel drops, the quality just dips and it's just not as fun or as great or as compelling as the first movie. A first example is the Incredibles franchise, because the first Incredibles movie was peak. It was 10 out of 10. It was such a great time watching the first Incredibles movie that the second movie, by the time it dropped in 2018, in my honest opinion, the second movie was not good, and it was a drop in quality from the first movie. So this does tie into movies, and unfortunately this situation has affected the Gladiator franchise, because the first Gladiator movie, it dropped in the year 2000, and that's a long time ago. We're in 2024. That's 24 years ago. So I watched that movie when I was a teenager in high school, and when I watched it, it was a great movie. I had a great time watching it. It had a great story, the story of Maximus, and just seeing his death, seeing him dying in the middle of the Gladiator arena. It was so compelling that I thought, in my honest opinion, yes, it's right for this movie to just have one movie in the last 15 years or so. But come to find out that I started to see trailers and started to see some reports of a Gladiator 2 being in the works, and that made me intrigued. That made me excited, because it was the same director that actually directed the first Gladiator movie. So you would actually think that we would still see the same quality, and the second movie would retain the same great juices that actually made the first movie so good. But this second movie, in my honest opinion, while it's not trash, it's not as great as the first movie, and it's not even as really good as the first movie. Sure, it has some good scenes, it has some good action sequences that when you can sink your teeth into those little portions and those little bits of the movie, you can kind of see that, okay, if this movie was actually having a different direction, this movie could be very great. But this movie also has some parts that, in my complete honest opinion, it made the viewing experience for me not good. It made the viewing experience for me not feeling right, because there are some historically inaccurate portions of this movie that the first movie did not have. And sure, the first movie wasn't really historically accurate, but this movie has one glaring reason why it's not historically accurate. And look, I love Denzel Washington. He is a 10 out of 10 actor. Watching him from American Gangster, he is such a great actor that he deserves every award that is given to him. He deserves every role that is given to him, and seeing that he's in the last stretch of his career and he's about to retire in the next year, and he's actually even in talks with doing Black Panther 3, that is great, and he should do that. But in my opinion, in this movie, he made the viewing experience in this movie not good, because he had an American accent throughout the whole movie, and this movie is supposed to be based in ancient Rome, where, in my honest opinion, I'm not a historian, but I'm pretty sure that in ancient Rome, there were no American accents. There was still the British accent, there was still the English accent, the American actual English accent that's originated from America. That didn't come until way later, like after the Roman Empire fell, you know? So there were no American type people during that time period, and just seeing Denzel Washington literally talked the way Denzel Washington talks, it just made this movie not really feel good, in my honest opinion, or not feel great. But this movie has some good parts, so let me talk about the good before the bad. So the action sequences are good, and the main character, in my honest opinion, is good. His name is Lucius, but at first he didn't want to go by Lucius because he's actually the son of Maximus, and we actually see throughout the movie that his mom, Lucilla, she actually made Lucius flee Rome and flee that area after Maximus's death, because he is actually the heir to the throne. He's the prince of this portion. So when he fled, it kind of saved his life and it saved her life. So he grew up, but he now actually grew a resentment towards his mother because, you know, as a kid, it's understandable because he got abandoned. So as he grew up, he actually turned into a fighter. You know, he actually found friends and he found a lover. I think it was his wife, you know, and now he's a grown man and he's like, and not a leader of an army, but he's basically in an army, and they now get attacked. And Pedro Pascal, he plays Marcus Acacius. He played this role good. So at first I thought that Acacius will be the main antagonist, because when Acacius, he brings his army, his fleets of ships, they're all just coming at this one location, and that location is where Lucius is at. Currently, Acacius attacks, his whole army now completely invades this whole land, and when this is happening, Acacius, he causes Lucius's wife to die because he calls for someone to shoot an arrow at Lucius, and it just basically impales her. And Lucius, he literally sees that, and as he's knocked over the shore and he falls into the water and he now washes up on shore, he is holding his wife's literal dead corpse in his hands. And that was a pretty good scene. That was a pretty good opener because it shows that Acacius, he's very evil at first, but we actually see that he's actually more sympathetic that you would actually come out to believe, because when, you know, the whole celebration of the Roman Empire, we see these two brothers, these two weird brothers, Emperor Geta and Emperor Caracalla, and they're weird, in my honest opinion. They were just playing evil, and they wanted to celebrate Acacius's win with this whole game of slaves being the warriors that were in Rome. And at the time, you know, they were all slaves, but they had to compete in the war games basically. So Acacius, he didn't want that, but they were kind of pressuring him for him to want that. And Acacius, he's now currently married to Lucilla, Lucius's mom. So as this movie is going on, we see that now that Lucius, he is actually captured. He gets turned into a slave, and when he gets turned into a slave, we see that he has to go through the hardships of being a slave. He has to go through all the disgusting things that the slaves went through, and as he's a slave, he is now put in this, you know, this arena, in this battle arena, and one person there that is watching is Denzel Washington, Macronus. But let me say about Macronus a little bit, because it is not common for someone that's American, that has an American accent, to be there, but it was common for an African person to be in the Roman time, either as a slave, or sometimes they will kind of level up from being slaves, you know, but they were common, they were there. But Denzel is there, and he is watching Lucius. As Lucius, he is killing these monkeys, and he ate one of the monkeys, and they were starting to, you know, mock him for being a monkey eater. So Denzel, aka Macronus, he is interested in Lucius. He wants Lucius to be the poster boy for his crusade to help Rome, or basically to hurt Rome, as we will see later in the movie. But as the movie is going on, you know, we're seeing the sequences, and the action sequences were good. That's the good part of the movie, is that they had a lot of bloody fights, a lot of crazy fights, and it was a good experience seeing the fight scenes. And we're seeing Acacius, you know, we're seeing that he doesn't really like, you know, the war games and the war aspect. He really wants to be with his family. But later in the movie, in the mid part of the movie, because this movie is long, so let me skip through and get to the real important parts, because we now find out that Lucius is actually the son of Maximus. At first, Lucilla, she wants to talk to Lucius and to be there for Lucius, but Lucius, he rejects her. He doesn't want anything to do with her. He doesn't even want to say his real name, Lucius. I forgot his name that he gave himself, you know, for denouncing his whole family and his whole ties. But, you know, she is heartbroken, and we now see that she tells Acacius. But remember, Lucius is still mad that Asacius is the one that caused his wife to die. And we're seeing that Lucius, he's actually rising up the ranks and he's gaining more favor. He's gaining more allegiance from the other slaves, from the other warriors that are all around, that are all basically having to fight for their lives, and all of them are dying, but they're actually finding hope in Lucius because he's becoming a leader by his sheer strength and his sheer resilience. But we now see that Asacius, he's not the actual villain in this movie, and the real villain is not Emperor Geta or Emperor Caracalla. It's actually Macrinus, because he orchestrates all of these events. The first event that he orchestrates is that he wanted to kill Asacius. The way that he killed Asacius was that Asacius, with the talk of Lucilla actually persuaded Asacius to try to cause an insurrection that will kill Emperor Geta and Emperor Caracalla, and that will actually help Lucius get freed so that they can escape and they can go far, far away from Rome. But Macrinus, he heard about that, and he now sent a mole to snitch on Asacius, which, when they're literally at the gates that can actually be the place to free the slaves, next you know, an arrow comes and all of Asacius' men dies, because it wasn't just one arrow, it was multiple people that had arrows, and they just killed everyone but keeping Asacius alive. So Asacius, he now got imprisoned, and at first one of the brothers, they wanted to kill Asacius, but the other one said that, you know, it'll be better for him to be killed in front of everybody. And when they put Asacius, now he's a slave, they stripped all of his accolades, they stripped everything, and they wanted the whole city to see his death, and they paired him up against Lucius. Now, at first, Lucius, he really wanted to kill Asacius. When the fight started, you know, he was trying to go in for the kill, but Asacius is a skilled fighter. He's a general, and he didn't want to kill Lucius. He was trying to actually be in a defensive stance and trying to reason with Lucius to tell Lucius that, look, I have something to tell you, but Lucius wasn't having it. So the fight was good. They had a great fight, in my opinion. This fight was actually great, and they were actually going crazy. So Lucius, he now actually gets the better of Asacius. He was beating him up. It was bloody. So Asacius, he now actually submitted. He submitted defeat. He forfeited. And when he was kneeling on the ground, he told Lucius that your dad is Maximus. So this caused Lucius to drop the sword, and he didn't want to kill Asacius, but the brothers, they didn't want that. They wanted death. They wanted Asacius to pay for trying to kill them. So they now told all of the bowmen to just shoot their arrows, and they all killed Asacius in front of everybody. So Macrinus, he sets that up. So he now also sets up the deaths of the two brothers, because he wanted Rome to fall, and he was just being a very evil person, because he didn't care who died. He just wanted everyone to die, because the way that Emperor Geta fell, the older brother, he was convinced by Macrinus, but Macrinus also convinced Emperor Caracalla that Emperor Geta is actually out to get him, and Emperor Geta, he was the one that actually set up all of this, because when Asacius died, the whole city of Rome was basically going crazy. They were causing a riot, and it caused, you know, Emperor Geta and Caracalla to get scared. So Caracalla, with the help of Macrinus, killed Emperor Geta, and that was crazy because your own brother killed Emperor Geta, but this caused Emperor Caracalla to not have the full power of Rome, and now Macrinus will have the power of Rome due to Emperor Caracalla giving and gifting the second in command of Rome. And this also takes away from the viewing experience, because he had an American accent this whole time. He just did not look the part, in my honest opinion, because of the way he sounded. He stuck out like a sore thumb. Denzel Washington is a 10 out of 10 actor. Denzel Washington is a great actor, but I wish he would at least did a British voice. But we see that Macrinus, he is so evil that he is causing everyone to die, and he also wanted Lucilla to die. So the way that he was trying to kill Lucilla, he wanted her to die in the arena. But we see that Lucius, he told one of his friends, and his friend was a former warrior, a former slave as well, but he is not a slave anymore. He's a free man, but he's also a nurse and a doctor. He told this man to actually go far away. I forgot the place, I ain't gonna lie to you, but when he went to this place, Lucius gave him a ring and he told him to tell them that this is from Lucius, the son of Maximus. And when this happened, a whole army came and swarming in. And when this whole army came, I ain't gonna lie, this scene at the end of the movie, it was pretty great. It was like a lot of bloody action, but the way that Macrinus got Lucille killed, it was fucked up because Lucius was there when he got into the arena. He actually caused a revolt that caused all the slaves to break free and caused all the slaves to now actually go in and start to kill all the Romans that were enslaving them. Then Macrinus, he now had an arrow because he did not want to leave until Lucilla died, and he now shot the arrow, killing Lucilla in front of Lucius's arms. And when that happened, Lucius was out for blood. He wanted to kill Macrinus, and Macrinus, he got his wish that the Roman Empire is fallen. But when, you know, he was fleeing, the whole army that the doctor he brought, and he was basically cornered because the Roman Empire that was fallen was actually following Macrinus, as well as Lucius was following Macrinus. So they were all going to the same location. And when Macrinus stopped his horse, and man, this fight, it was kind of emotional, but it kind of ended anticlimactically because basically Lucius chopped off Macrinus's arm, and his arm was basically just oozing blood, and Lucius now cut Macrinus' face. And it didn't really cut his face, he kind of cut his throat. So this ended up killing Macrinus. And like I said, this movie has a lot of great action scenes, but it's not as great as the first movie. It's still good, it's still serviceable, it's still entertaining enough that it can actually make you entertain, and it's not sleepy, it's not boring, but it just shows that the first Gladiator did not need a sequel. The first Gladiator, it should have just stayed as it is. The story was good, it was complete. We didn't really need to see the son of Maximus really go on his story and go on his adventure, but the action scenes were good. Some of the portrayals were good, but like I said, Macrinus, I did not like that he had an American accent. I really do believe that they should have actually told Denzel to use a British accent, but he denied it, and he had his reasons for denying it. But unfortunately, it makes the viewing experience not as good as the first one. But that's the end of the video. I'm out. Peace.